Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the garden question and answer video that I do pretty much every Sunday. You can ask gardening questions down in the comment section below the video, and that's where your question lives. And then I go through them once a week and pick maybe between 20 and 25 to answer. Again, your guys' participation is what makes this video happen every week, and you continue to ask great questions on a weekly basis. Holly is back here. Holly, what are you doing? What are you doing? Well, no, ma'am. Whatever it was you're doing, don't do that. Holly's back here behind me, and it's 30 degrees or something out here as I'm filming this, and so she absolutely loves 30 degrees. That's the sweet spot for her, it feels like. She's very, very peppy. Let's see. There was quite a bit of content this week. I got a new shovel to replace my my old trenching shovel, and that was a subscriber that sent in a photo to me of what they thought was the shovel that I was using, because I got that shovel like 20 years ago, and I've used 4 or 5 inches of it up. So if you go back and look at that video, there was a couple pansy planting videos and daffodils going in, cleanup video that you may have seen by now, definitely a leaf disposal video, although there's leaves still back here because I leave a lot of them right in place like they fall off the trees, but that video's hopefully gone up by now. But anyway, there's a lot of content this past week that went up. So let's jump into some questions. One of the big things is the $60 off on the Learn to Garden video series. I also put up a video about that this week. I don't expect people to watch that video unless you're actually interested in buying the Learn to Garden video series, and thank you to those of you who have. But Sherry says that she had bought it, and it's a great purchase, encourages people to take advantage of the steep discount because there's a $60 off discount for about 2 more weeks. As you're seeing this, maybe that's about 2 weeks left in December, and it's $60 off. It's DEC60 is the discount code. Now we'll jump into some questions. Number one, do any of your neighbors watch the channel? Yeah, I get a few people in the neighborhood that have stopped me because I walk Holly all the time and Griffin all the time, and I'll get a couple people that stop me here or there. I think the way people consume YouTube is probably similar to the way I do. I'll watch something for a while and then I'll drop it and then I'll pick it back up later, and YouTube is so funny about how it recommends things. Even though you've asked it to recommend you things, it still will go, no, I know better than you, and will recommend, and if you watch some particular video, it'll then think that you want to watch 100 more just like it. So it's an interesting way in which YouTube presents things for you to watch. And so I think people just kind of come and go over a period of time. And then I've got folks that have probably watched almost every video over the 6 years or so, which is kind of a 6.5 years or whatever it's been. I appreciate, whatever views I get. And yes, some of the neighbors do. And my son follows, he loves Reddit, and he always is finding somebody who's recommending me on Reddit, and he'll send me this. And one of them was a neighbor that was talking about seeing me walk the dogs all the time in the neighborhood. He sent me recently, so that one was kind of fun. Okay, so second one, again, is kind of not really a question, but it's about labeling the question and answer videos. And I get, you need more photos, you need more of this, you need more of that. This is the one video a week where I just write down some questions and answer them. And I'm probably not going to do a whole lot more than that. No, I'm sorry for that, but it's a heck of a lot of work, and it's just me doing the editing currently. I've explored that all over the place, but I don't know how. You can put chapters down at the bottom for the different questions, but again, it would add an hour or more every week to this video that I kind of just enjoy doing. So I don't want to suck the enjoyment, out of it. So they're probably just going to kind of stay like they are, and I know that's slightly frustrating to some people. Somebody asked, what is the biggest pleasant surprise we've had about a plant that we thought might not work out, and it did? I've got the problem with answering this question is all of those plants that I would name we haven't had a real winter since I've been on this project. And, you know, we at some point are going to get a 0 degree night, you know, despite whatever, you know, the map update doesn't mean your weather actually changed. We'll get a real winter at some point. And so the lowest temperature I think we've had since I've been here is 13. 13 is not really testing the boundaries of a lot of these plants that are here. So I've got marginal yucca that I've overwintered twice outside. I've got lamandra. I've got, you know, there's a bunch of things out here that I think at some point will definitely have a winter that will hurt them in a big way. So that was a difficult one to ask, you know, for this project, because again, at some point we'll have a week where it doesn't get above, you know, we'll have 5 or 6 straight days where it doesn't get much above 32, and, you know, nighttime temperatures in single digits. And that will be that's the real test, you know, for these marginal things. Let's see. So somebody has some Gulfstream Nandina, and they had never seen them flower or berry, and they had heard, you know, Nandinas are, you know, invasive plants. Gulfstream's a smaller version of Nandina domestica. There are a lot of other named varieties since then. But we had Nandina domestica, we had Nandina domestica compacta, which was slightly more compact, and then Nandina domestica Gulfstream, and then Firepower Nandinas one. Firepower Nandinas doesn't flower or fruit, but the other 3 do. And now we have a bunch that don't fruit, lemon lime Nandinas and obsession Nandinas. So you can have non-invasive Nandinas in your landscape, and they're great, tough ornamental plants, really. They've never been, you know, kind of at the top of my list of things, just because I grew up with big old rangy Nandina domesticas that did fruit and were invasive for sure. But they had some Gulfstreams. They never flowered, they never fruit. They thought the whole invasive thing was overblown. And then, you know, out of the blue, they went into the wooded area behind them and saw a bunch of Nandinas. They may not have been from your Nandinas ever. They think the deer have been eating, or they know the deer have been eating the tops out of their Gulfstream Nandina. The reason I actually picked this is because it's kind of funny, because Nandina is considered one of the most deer-resistant plants. It's one of the reasons it's been able to establish itself in wooded areas, you know, as an invasive plant, is because the deer just walk by it. So it's kind of funny. It's one of those things, is the reason I don't spend a lot of time on deer-resistant plants is because every time I do, somebody down below is going to tell me a deer eats it in their garden. So a deer in a protected space will eat things that are unpalatable to it in order to continue to be in a protected space. You know, it's much better than what, you know, our garden here, unfortunately, has a couple acres back here behind it that's never been developed, and there are deer living back here. And when we left for 2 months, they're in this space because it's quiet. You know, there's no reason to leave. I think they'll eat some things that are, you know, generally unpalatable. But yeah, you can, with almost, you know, with these kind of invasive plants, if you do have Nandina domestica, you know, if you're concerned about them setting berries, you can just prune them after they flower. That's the one time a year they're going to flower and fruit. So you can prevent it from happening. But I also thought it was interesting within this question was that deer are eating something in their garden. It's just absolutely on every deer-resistant plant list you would ever see. You know, just kind of the way it is. If you have a big enough herd of deer, they'll eat pretty much anything. Okay, so plants we'd love to have in our garden. It's a lot of questions like that this week. We had not had, I did an unboxing video from Plant Delights Nursery this week, and there's a wild ginger in that video, a serum. We just don't have any in the garden. Most of our shade out here is dry shade, and so I'm missing some of the things that would prefer moist shade. Even my other shady space over here, that native redbud keeps it so dry over there that it's difficult. I only have one good kind of semi-shaded moist space over here, so it's preventing me from having some of those items, and a serum being one of them. Definitely pumped for summer blooming camellias. Camellia, the species Azalea, which is so confusing. We have Camellia sasanquas. They're blooming now, and if it wasn't blurry back here in the background, you could see Camellia sasanquas blooming. There's 4 of them in this back garden blooming, 3 more in the front at least. Camellia japonicas tend to bloom February, March. Camellia azalea, which is again just another species like sasanqua or japonica. Azalea, again, it's going to confuse people because azaleas are something different. They bloom in the summertime. They tend to bloom in the summertime, and there's going to be a wave of them coming. There's lots of them. There are already a few out there in the world available, but there's a lot of work going into them, and there's going to be some super interesting ones coming with some variegated flowers and that kind of thing. So super interested in summer blooming camellias for sure. A couple native plants I'm missing out here. I have big leaf hydrangeas. We have, let me see, I've got Hydrangea paniculata, Hydrangea quercifolia, which is oak leaf hydrangea, Hydrangea macrophylla, big leaf hydrangea, French hydrangea, the ones that everybody kind of knows, big blue flowers or pink flowers. And then I don't have a climbing hydrangea, but the one hydrangea that I'm really missing is Hydrangea arborescens, our native, one of our other native hydrangeas, and there's so many great new ones. And NC State, introduced most of them, or the breeders for most of them. And then one other thing I'm missing in the garden is Fothergilla, and another great native to the southeast. And so that would be another one that I will add out here at some point, but I want to add an interesting one. We'll go back down to Bobby Green's in Fairhope, Alabama. He works a lot with, improving and doing some hybrid Fothergilla that I would be interested in going down there and taking a look at them and bringing one of those home for the garden. So there's always things that I'm interested in having out here in the garden, and again, some of them are natives that I'm just kind of missing, especially when you have the other non-natives of the same plant family, which is anyway. What plants would I not want to plant? This is interesting because how many questions are kind of, in this similar. The plants that I definitely would not want to plant out here, we talked about vinca in the last 2 videos. Somehow that's come up. Vinca and English ivy, would definitely be on that list of I would not want them in the garden. I do again use some variegated vinca in containers because it's great at having some color weeping over the side of the container, the spiller that people use in containers. And then I wouldn't put any fruit trees out here, other than I have an Amelanchier, which is native. The native serviceberry that's out in the front garden is in fact a fruit tree. Fruit's great on it if you ever get finished fruit on them. They taste like blueberries, maybe even a little better than blueberries, but they don't have any shelf life. So that's the reason that, kind of commercially we don't see a whole lot of serviceberry berries at the grocery store, at the Harris Teeter or whatever. You're not going to see that, but they are fantastic. But that's the only, and there's a fig out here. I grow a lot of food in this garden, but I tend to avoid fruit trees here. We just, it's one of those things I'm going to put so much energy and effort into an apple that it's going to be like an $80 apple. It just doesn't seem worth it, when I can grow lots and lots of tomatoes, lots and lots of peppers, lots and lots of lettuce, and then I can go to the grocery store and have somebody else or go to a farm stand and have those fruit things that are just much harder to grow and will occupy such a big space out here. So it's just not for me, but a lot of people, I do a lot of consultation work for people who just absolutely want an entire garden full of, fruiting edible plants and trees. And then Euonymus ground cover, that'd be another ground cover like Euonymus coloratus. It's not attractive to me most of the time. It's supposed to turn different colors at different times of the year, but it's, more of a weedy mess than anything else. And some of the other ground cover Euonymus tend to have disease-related issues. Best ones I see, though, are around water features, like down at Ram and Tom's beautiful garden down there in Athens, Georgia. She's got some ground cover Euonymus that actually look great near her water features. Had to put holly in, and my coffee was getting cold sitting over on the step in the 30-degree morning as I'm filming this. The next question is a kind of a follow-up to what plants would I not plant. Somebody had asked how to remove Vinca minor, and unfortunately all of these weedy questions are the same. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're talking to me about poison ivy or vinca or English ivy or some sort of vine that's out of control. You either have to pull it and pull it and pull it, or bury it in cardboard and wood chips for some period of time, or I would almost always mow it off if you can first, whatever strategy you're using. Or you have to cover it in plastic for some period of time, or you have to till it, turn the soil over and see if you can get up all the roots from the vinca, or you have to spray it. And you're probably, with a woody vine ground cover like that, probably going to have to spray it multiple times. So it's really about just going out there and getting on top of it and working and working and working. I struggle with these things because I do consultations for folks, and I open the photos that they send for the consultation, and then immediately struck with, how do I get this person to the starting line? They don't want to necessarily spray chemicals, but sometimes that's just kind of what the herbicide's out there for. You got to get to the starting line. Once you get to the starting line and you can get some control over it, in the future it's easy to pull it, or it's easy to, it's much easier in the future, but you got to get to the starting line. And so the quickest way to do that is covering something in plastic, or cardboard and wood chips, or cardboard and mulch, or spraying it, whatever you have to do to speed the process of getting to the starting line, because otherwise you're going to be years and the vinca getting worse, trying to figure out how to, just to get started. So that to me is what herbicides exist for, is kind of getting you to the starting line. But if you can, you can mow it off, with a lawnmower, as long as there's no hidden rocks and things like that. And mow it off with the lawnmower, and then just cover it in a giant piece of plastic, pin the plastic down, and just let it die under that for some period of time. That's all. That's an option as well. If you're just 100% on, I won't spray anything. Okay. So somebody's in zone 9A in Florida, and they want a grass border, but they don't want liriope or mondo grass. It has morning shade and afternoon sun, so I don't know that afternoon sun may have been too much for your mondo grass down in Florida anyway. If you wanted that, liriope would definitely work. You could probably get away with lamandra, which would be a slightly bigger grass than liriope or mondo grass. And then I've got Dianella too. That's another one that's been on the, I'm surprised it's a live list, because it's a zone 9 8B perennial, the one that I have, and it's over there in the garden, planted in the ground. It's doing fantastic, and it's seen 25 degrees so far. But again, 25 degrees is probably still zone 9 or 8B for sure. That's not cold enough to actually hurt it. But lamandra, Dianella, both of those would work. A lot of the other small clumping grasses, something like blue fescue, it's probably too hot in zone 9 for it. Okay, how does the like button help the channel? I have no idea how the help button, the like button. So I appreciate, that everybody hits the like button, and it's supposed to help it's supposed to help the channel in some way where they'll recommend my video more. Actually, the thing I think that makes them recommend the video more is watching it all the way through. I think that's the number one thing that, if it's a video where people click on it and then immediately click off of it 30 seconds later, I think those are the kinds of things that actually hurt a video over time on YouTube. I don't know that the like button does anything. There was it wasn't funny actually, but there was a video. I was looking at how to replace something on my AC unit, because I'll tackle anything. I really will. I've had the nursery forever. Electrician, plumber, carpenter, auto mechanic. You have to do it all. When you're starting a nursery, you had to do everything. So I'll jump in and at least give something a chance. And I was looking at changing a capacitor on an AC unit, and the video that was the number one video on YouTube, that when you kill the electric on your AC, that capacitor can still have some electricity, can still have enough energy in it to hurt you. And so you're supposed to ground it, and gets rid of the power that's in it before you mess with it. And the number one video on YouTube did not include that step, and it had thousands of thumbs down. You know, it was actually a dangerous video, but people's engagement with it, their anger about it, their comments below it, their dislike of it actually drove that video up to the number one video. Hopefully people were reading the comments and that kind of thing. So it was the most worthless video ever, but it was in the number one spot if you were searching for that particular thing. So I have no idea, you know, overall how YouTube goes about recommending something to someone. I do think it's watch time at the end of the day, and I know people are making ridiculously long videos. This video will be long. My Q&As are whatever time it takes to answer these questions. So you might get one that's 25 minutes one week and one that's 40. I think last week's was 40 minutes. This one might be too, I don't know. But it's not with intent. None of my videos ever have an intent. I don't start off with how long could this thing be. If it's 9 minutes to tell the story, it's 9 minutes. If it's 20 minutes to tell the story, it's 20 minutes. I'm not going to sit here and make longer videos to make YouTube happy with me. I think that I want to teach the thing I'm trying to teach and move on with my day and let you move on with your day. But again, I have never have any understanding of why YouTube recommends one thing over another. Thank you for hitting the like button. I have no idea if that has any impact, because if all of you come on, hit the like button and click off 30 seconds later, that video is going to do terrible. You come on, you do nothing, you make no comment, you watch the entire thing, they're probably going to recommend it. That's probably the answer to that. It's just kind of a funny thing. And it seems like it's always a moving target. So I just don't care. I just want to make videos where I can teach the thing I'm trying to teach. And whatever YouTube does with that, you know, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Okay, so do we aerate our garden beds? So this person's using a fork in like their vegetable garden to break up the soil, basically add some additional air a little deeper down in the soil. I initially tilled that vegetable garden, and I initially tilled these annual beds out here, and I've put up 3 videos planting annuals in the last week and a half, planting pansies out here, and you could see I can stick a trowel down in the ground about 8 inches down. So I just don't need to aerate these beds anymore. I've gotten to the point where I'm just kind of past needing to do it. But I do think initially, maybe for the first couple of seasons, you should till it the first time. Tilling is killing, and I actually want to make a t-shirt that says tilling is killing. Because anytime you flip the soil over, you're killing soil life. But when you're initially starting a garden and the garden has no soil life, it's good to flip it over, get some compost down in it, get that engine started, you know, so you can build actual soil life. So the first couple of seasons, yes, I will aerate something. After that, it should be unnecessary if you're taking good care of the soil, keeping it covered in the winter, you know, using leaves or something when the garden's not actively growing to keep it covered and protecting that soil life. You shouldn't need to do a whole lot of that type of thing. If you're sticking a fork down in the ground though, and it's still difficult to pull back on it, you're not there yet. So, you know, just based on that. Once it gets easy to do, I just don't think you need to do any kind of ongoing really tough love on the soil anymore, because you'll be killing a lot of the things that you've built up in the soil. Okay, so will 3 to 4 inches of mulch layer prevent established weeds from returning, or should they be dug out in the spring? So established weeds, I'm assuming you're saying you have perennial weeds. If, you know, that would be weeds that would, you know, just like any other herbaceous perennial, it would die to the ground and then come back the following spring. 3 to 4 inches of mulch will not stop that. So if you were like trying to bury liriope or mondo grass or English ivy or vinca, or, you know, those things all stay evergreen. I haven't named a herbaceous one yet. You know, if you were trying to bury creeping Charlie, if you were trying to bury any of those kinds of things that stay perennial, 3 to 4 inches of mulch isn't going to probably get rid of them. You're going to need to you could bury them in the cardboard method, or cut them off to the ground. You could spray them. You could do whatever you want. I don't want a video where I'm telling people to spray a bunch of stuff. Now I've done it twice, but again, you need to get to the starting line. It will prevent most seeds from germinating unless you, of course, have squirrels and cats and dogs and other things out there, disturbing that barrier and exposing those seeds. So if you have crabgrass, as an example, is an annual weed. It's coming up, it's producing tons of seed throughout the season, and it literally just dies. But that seed is still there. If you put a 3 to 4 inch cap on that in the late winter before it starts to germinate in the spring, so let's say late February, early March, before those soil temperatures come up enough for that crabgrass to germinate, it will prevent most of that. But any disturbances you have, again, in that mulch that exposes any soil, that seed is still there and it's viable for a long time and it'll start to come up. But perennial weeds, the ones that, have roots under the ground where they have, sugars stored during the winter time, that mulch, it'll hurt it, but it definitely won't kill it. So you have to remove it some other way. All right, so this is another interesting question. It's zone map related, or the warming related, I should say. Somebody's up in zone 7A and they've never had to chill any of their bulbs. Do they need to now that the winters aren't as consistently cold? And that's a great question. The bulbs I need to chill here are hyacinths and tulips. My daffodils have been chosen for ones that don't need as many chill hours, and you can go on Color Blend's website and there's a southern bulb tab, so they have the ones that don't need as many chill hours all listed together, and you would want to use those. But yeah, if you've been able to plant tulips in the past in zone 7A and they come back consistently big and full and vigorous, having warmer winters and warmer nights overall during the winter is going to have an impact on those bulbs over time. So yes, I think people will have to, that line is going to move north and probably already has moved north for these bulbs getting enough chill hours during the winter to come back vigorously. So what happens with our hyacinths is I can cold treat them or not. I actually don't have to the first time. They have enough in that bulb. They come up and they're beautiful and they're vigorous. And then maybe the next year, just based on the winter we have, they come up vigorous again. And then over time though, you'll just see them decline year over year over year. And tulips do the exact same thing, tend to be a little faster for us here in zone 8A. But I think that line's probably going to move further north where you're not getting enough. There's going to be a run of 2 or 3 winters in a row where it doesn't get enough chill hours, where it's going to make those bulbs decline in all likelihood. And, All right, so somebody wants to transplant a Carolina Sapphire, Arizona Cypress that's too close to a fence. Can they do it in the spring? You could do it now if you wanted to. It wouldn't hurt it at all. You could do it anytime. It's just been planted. It hadn't been in the ground that long. So anytime that you're ready to go out there and do it and the ground is workable, you can move that Arizona Cypress. So if you wanted to do it during the winter or in the early spring, or, if you're looking for the best time to do it, late winter, probably right before it starts to put on some growth again. Somebody has a Farfugium japonica, wants to plant it, but it has a flower on it. Will the flower shrivel? They're in 9B in Florida. I've talked about buying plants in full flower and kind of enjoying the flowers before you put it in the ground, because when you plant something, you plant an azalea in full flower, you plant a gardenia in full flower, those flowers are likely going to decline just because of that transplant shock is going to the plant's going to drop those flowers in all likelihood, not all the time. But if you buy hydrangea as another example in full flower and then plant it and expect that thing to go through transplant shock and maintain those flowers. If you have one flower stalk on your Farfugium though, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to stick that thing in the ground, and you're down in 9B. It'll root in the ground all winter long. It'll stay evergreen for you. You may get a few more flower spikes on it. This is the best time of year for you to be planting in 9B in Florida, because this is the cool time. It's easier for you to be outside working. It's easier on that plant to go in the ground. So that's what I would do, because it can get established this winter. So how can you tell if compost in bags is bad at the end of the season? So if you go to some store and they have all the compost is discounted, or they bought it back in the spring and it's still sitting there all season and water got in the bags, it's definitely smell. You can smell when compost or any kind of organic material, humus, compost, leaf mold, whatever it is, it gets kind of a funky smell to it when it's bad. You can generally, though, take care of that. If you were to buy some cow manure or something and it had an off smell, you can open those bags and pour it out on the ground and just let it dry out. And typically, that seems to kill most of those bad bugs that are in it. So that's, in my mind, that's what I would do. If you think you got some bad compost, put it out, just spread it out somewhere to let it dry, and then, I would jump right in and use it. Let's see. Okay, and then bulbs up too early. This is going to be a problem everywhere. I've got bulbs coming up everywhere in this garden. Somebody said, should they be concerned, having bulbs up too early? They had some in containers that were up too early. Those are the ones that I would probably be a little more concerned about, because those containers are going to warm up more during the day. So I always talk about containers being more exposed to the cold, right? And therefore not as hardy. These bulbs are plenty hardy, okay? But the issue with them could be that the container, not only does it get colder, in a container above the ground at night, it also gets warmer during the day. It's exposed to the warmer temperatures too. So bulbs are definitely going to try to race ahead in containers. When I've done bulbs in containers before, I actually leave the containers in the shade for some period of time to keep them colder and get more cold treatment on them. And then I'll bring them out late winter into the sunny areas where I actually want to see them bloom. So that's a strategy I use. If you put bulbs in containers and leave them out in the full sun, they're likely going to come up too early. So there's your container answer. If you're doing bulbs in containers, I'd put them in shady space for the winter time. And then once they start coming up toward the beginning of February or something, then throw them out into the sun to let them bloom. The ones in the ground, I don't worry about a whole lot. They'll typically come up about this much and then go, oh no, and kind of stop. You can throw some leaves over top of them. That would be totally fine. Last winter, unfortunately, we had a lot of bulbs up before that big killing freeze happened in December. And when that happened, it burnt the foliage on the tops of my bulbs. So when they came up, they were not as attractive last season. My daffodils did not look great at all last season because the foliage looked bad. I probably should have thrown some leaves or something over them that afternoon. So that would be the only real strategy you can use. But virtually every bulb in this garden is thinking about peeking through the soil right now. I think that'll be the end of it. I mean, it's cold, consistently cold right now, so I think that'll shut them down and they'll just stay like that. But throwing some leaves or something over them is about the only strategy you can use. Okay, let's see. Here's a great question. Somebody asked about soil around new homes versus older homes. This is a really big issue. The way, especially in this neighborhood, construction is done so horribly. They come in and dump a load of riprap in the front yard of any house. I live in a neighborhood where every house gets torn down. I mean, if this house sold and it would sell in 24 hours, it would literally sell in 24 hours. Within just a few months, it would be bulldozed. This garden would be gone, and there'd be a pile of riprap in the front so that the trucks can pull up and park on the front lawn area or the front garden area to build this house. They dump piles of sand out there. They dump piles of gravel out there. They dump piles of everything out there, okay? And then they would drive on it and drive on it and drive on it. And then they'd push that. They'll take a little bit of that material out of there, but they leave so much. It's just a mess. I mean, they just don't care about the garden part of it. They're there to build a house, and you know, the heck with everything else. And it's every house in this neighborhood that gets built. I want to tell the person who's already, because the next house is already bought too. This one will not only sell in 24 hours and be torn down and be rebuilt, before that other one gets rebuilt, it'll be sold. That house, I'd really like to tell that owner that they need to make sure that builder gets all that stuff. And they compact that soil. It takes years to recover from this. It takes your plants rooting down in the ground. It takes, you know, for me, I would want to cover all that space in wood chips for some period of time and let the earthworms and other things kind of take care of some of that compaction. Would be ideal. Unfortunately, a lot of people live in neighborhoods where they're not going to be able to cover the front garden and the front yard in wood chips, you know, because of an HOA or whatever. But that would be the ideal way to go. But it is very difficult. I am amazed at the things I see them do to the soil on new construction. And one of the first jobs they do on big new subdivisions in open spaces is scrape the topsoil off and then mound it up as some sort of mounds around the subdivision to then plant evergreen things on to create some sort of screen for the subdivision that now need to be irrigated because they're 4 or 5 feet up above the grade. It's just all bizarre, you know, approach to how you would how you would create garden areas in these neighborhoods. So patience, that's really the only thing. You need to get compost down or create your own compost using wood chips and improve that soil over time. Try to get out as much of that. You may need to hire somebody, honestly, if it's bad enough where they've buried enough gravel and buried enough builder sand or, you know, mortar sand and all the other things that they bury around them. It may require hiring someone, you know, to initially help you out with those kinds of things. But there's a big difference between a new house and one, you know, this one's been here 90 years. And so, you know, all the stuff, it was a weedy space that was just mowed. But those weeds and the earthworms and the grubs and all the other stuff that was lit, it was still an improved space, you know, since the construction had been done. Even though it looked kind of weedy and stuff, the soil wasn't bad. So somebody had planted their agapanthus, and of course it just melted when we got the first cold. Mine have as well, and they're literally, I don't know, you can't see them right here, but I have some as well. Same thing. That's what happens to agapanthus in colder areas. It just kind of melts. As long as they were pretty good size and were ones that were for zone 7, if you're in zone 7, that it doesn't matter. They'll be back. They'll be back in the spring, unless we had a really atrociously bad winter. But that is how agapanthus go to sleep ugly. That's what I'll say. Hosta go to sleep ugly. You know, they just melt. So somebody said best time to apply lime for shrubs, fall or March. So I don't understand. When I read this question, I don't know if you're just applying it to individual shrubs, because that's not the way I would go about liming. If you do need to lime, and again, if you're liming something, it needs to be based on a soil test. I don't know what shrubs would need lime. That's also an issue because a lot, and I mean a lot, of the flowering shrubs we use in our gardens are actually acid-loving kind of plants. And so I don't know that your shrubs need lime. Depends on what it is and where your pH is. And so again, not recommending anybody use lime unless they have a soil test. And then the adding lime makes sense for those particular plants, because if you were trying to grow blueberries, obviously you'd never lime those. They love extremely low pH. Same thing with azaleas, rhododendrons, you know, that loropetalum, that abelia, that gardenia. Whoa, that gardenia really loves a low pH. That camellia back there, that redbud, virtually everything in this garden is for lower pHs. So there would be nothing shrub-wise that I would want to lime in the garden. And then the other question part of this is, are you liming plant to plant or the whole space? So you'd want to do the whole garden if you actually needed lime and it matched with the soil test and the plants that you have in your garden. So there's a lot of information there. And then, so the answer to your question about when to do it, fall is definitely the best time to do it, because if you're in an area that gets freeze thaw, that is going to allow that lime to get down in the ground. How can lime actually penetrate the soil and be effective for you, the only way is to get it down in the ground by some sort of freeze thaw is the way it's going to happen. Either it has to be tilled in initially, or you have to have some situation where the soil structure itself is changing, expanding and contracting. That's what's going to get that lime down in the ground. That's why fall is the best time to do it if you needed to do it. Couple more here. So in the winter, do I treat small quart pots differently than larger ones? Yes, definitely. I got in those 4 very small containers from Plant Delights in that unboxing video this past week. I will definitely not be putting that Akuba in the ground. That Akuba's hardy in zone 7 to 9. I'm in, they say 8A on the map, but I'm still treating this as zone 7. I'm not putting that little quart pot in the ground until the other side of winter in March or late March or early April, something like that. Same thing with the Aspidistra that I got. So yeah, if I'm buying small quart containers like this, unless it was something that was extremely cold hardy, hosta would be an example of that. I'd go stick a hosta in the ground from pretty much any size, as long as the ground was workable. I'm not going to plant those things. Larger 3-gallon, 5-gallon, 7-gallon material, I would definitely stick in the ground. They're going to be, the age of the plant definitely has an impact on cold hardiness. There's no question about that. That December freeze that hurt a couple plants in this garden that were only a couple years old, over at the Ralston, were unfazed, that were 15 years old. So it definitely has a negative. The younger the plant is, the more susceptible it is to any kind of problem. Overwatering, underwatering, cold, hot, everything. So yes, I'm a little more careful. I like to plant small containers, but I'm a little more cautious, making sure the timing is a little bit better timing, which I would think was late winter, early spring. Let's see. Last question for this week. Somebody needs to transplant 2 8-foot tall camellias, and so I have videos on the channel for this. And again, I probably have a video on the channel for virtually everything, for a lot of things at this point. But transplanting 2 big 8-foot camellias is going to take you some effort, and I would definitely root prune them. So sometime sooner than later, I would go out there and cut the roots along the drip line, preparing them to move. And then they wanted to know if they should do a rejuvenation pruning on them. I would cut some material off when you transplant it. So I would root prune them now. I transplanted in maybe March or early April, about the time they're finishing flowering, and then I would give it some sort of pruning to compensate for the damage to those roots at the same time. So again, thank you guys so much for participating. The sun has definitely gotten in my face since I've been standing in this spot. There's about 2 more weeks on the $60 discount on the Learn to Garden video series. Thank you guys who have signed up for it. Thank you to those of you who are considering it. And you can give it as a gift. You just sign up under your email address, and then you can change, when you're logged in, you can actually change the email address that you're using to the person that you're trying to gift it to. Thank you guys for participating in the video. Ask questions down below, and I'll see you next week.